Hi, thanks for tuning into the video. Before we get started, I wanted to invite you over to my personal website at toddbrandon.com. There you can find out more about me, and you can even contact me through the website. And now, on to the video. Hey everybody, it's Todd Brandon, and in this video we're going to talk a little bit more about building out the rest of our vendor detail form. In the last video we got started on it, so we got this upper sort of header portion of it where we will have the vendor name, the vendor website show up, and then we have this back to main button which we got working that closes the form and then opens the main form. And so eventually we want to have it set up in this lower portion where we have the contact information for the vendor, and that will be by way of a subform, and we've yet to build that form out, but it will be based on a query that we already built out in the previous video. So let's do one thing here. Let's go back to the main form. Now that we have our vendor detail form, we can wire up the select button when we select one of our vendors from our drop down or our combo box here. If we go to form view, see we've got this combo box. And when we select the vendor, we want to be able to click the select button and open the vendor detail button to that particular vendor. So let's do that now. Let's go back to design view. And one of the things that we'll need to do is we'll need to, first of all, click on the select button, make sure it's selected, and then go to open the property sheet. And in here, we're going to set up an on-click event. So on the event tab, we want to click on the three dots, the button with the three dots, that's our builder, and then we're going to select code builder and click OK. And so this opens up a code editor window, and then it sets up our sub procedure for our click event. So the first thing I want to do is I want to test this by showing the output or the output that we get from our combo box. And remember, we had to name that combo box. So if I go back here, we have a name for it. If we go to all, the name is CVO vendor name. And so let me go back to the select button. Let's go to our event. And what I want to do is I want to create a message box. And I want that message box to output the value of that combo box. And the me exclamation point is the way we refer back to the form that we're actually working in. So the combo box are the, our select button. This is our select button click event, right? So that select button is in the vendor detail form, and that me exclamation point refers back to the vendor detail form. And then so we can select the combo box vendor name, which is a part of that form, and then .value would return the value. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. I'm going to close the code editor, and then I'm going to go to form view in the main form, not the vendor detail form. So go to form view. And so with Terra Technologies selected, I'll click the select button. We get a message box here with the number 2. Well, what does that mean? I thought maybe we'd get back the value of the vendor name. Well, this is actually the vendor ID. So if we click OK, go back to ABC, click select, we get a new number. We get number 1. Well, if we go to the vendor, after I click OK, we'll go back to the vendor table. Notice that ABC has a vendor ID 1. Terra Technologies has vendor ID number 2. So if we go back and select Great Plains Group to test this again, let's do that. We should get the number 4, and we do. That's the ID. So that's very important, because if you remember a few videos ago, we created our query, contact by vendor. If I open up the design view, remember that we had vendor ID as criteria from our vendor contact table. And if I go back to vendor contact, remember we have a vendor ID field for all of our contacts that has to be selected in order to tie it back to a vendor. So close that. If I set this criteria to equal 4, That's going to be Great Plains Group. So we should get our contacts back that are tied to Great Plains Group by doing that. So if I go up here to the tab, right-click, and select Datasheet View, I get only the contacts that have a vendor ID of 4. If I go back to Design View, I can change this to 1. I can open it in Datasheet View again. And in this case, I only get contacts back with the vendor ID of 1. This is kind of the fundamental foundation. I may have mentioned this earlier in a previous video, but this is the fundamental foundation upon which this application is built, is this ability to query the contacts by vendor ID. So let's close that. Let's go back and let's work on that main form. That was actually a little bit of a side trip. I mean, we'll get back to it. But as of right now, what I really want to do is be able to open the vendor detail form. So I can comment this out. And all we got to do is you just precede your comment with a single quote. It'll turn it green, which means it's a comment. That is code that will not, that's a line that will not be executed as code, I guess is the way I should put that. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a method called doCommand. And it's going to be open form. So we kind of used this in the macro builder before, but now we're doing it in actual VBA code. So if you notice, it shows us the open form, the arguments that we need. We definitely need a form name. That's the only required argument. All the other arguments are optional. So what I'm going to do in double quotes, I'm going to put the name of the form that we're going to open, which is vendor detail. And so there's a couple of other arguments, and notice that it puts those arguments in bold as we put our commas. But the only argument I need is the where condition. So I'm going to type space, another comma, and where filter name now, I'm hit another space, and now my where condition is highlighted. And it's going to be vendor ID. And this is like what we did when we were in the query designer, where we went down to the criteria cell under vendor ID. We're just typing it out in code now. So it's going to be vendor ID equals. And this and will concatenate it to our criteria. Remember, in that criteria or in the message box in the code right here, I use this value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that, copy it, and I'm going to paste it right here. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to close it, and I'm going to test it. So I'm going to go to the main form. I'm going to right-click on the tab, go to Form View, and with Great Plains Group selected, I'm going to click the Select button. So look, it does open up my vendor detail form. I've got a little issue here. A formatting issue. I need to extend that box out a little bit more, that text box. But we've gotten exactly what we had hoped for. If I select True Response Solutions, click that, I get True Response Solutions with the data that I want. So we're rocking pretty quick. Let me go ahead and real quick fix that formatting issue. And we'll just extend it out there to be safe. And so now I can close that. I will save it, yes. And now let's go back to Great Plains. Let's select that. And so it all fits in there. So let me go back to main. And that's all working great. So we're going to double click the main form to open it. And this is what it'll look like when we open our application. Well, notice there's no vendor selected yet because we haven't typed anything. We haven't chosen anything from the combo box. So what if the user clicks on select? We're going to get this nasty looking error which basically says you have a syntax error. You're missing an operator in your query expression, vendor ID equals. Well, back in our VBA code where we just typed this out, it's not getting a value back from the combo box. So there's no value. Remember, we had vendor IDs being returned for the vendor names that we selected. It's a null value at this point because we haven't selected any vendor. So this is a terrible user experience. So I'll fix that in the next video and show you how.